Yeah, US President Biden in Alabama at a Lockheed Martin facility that produces those Javelin missiles we've been hearing so much about. Remember, they are anti-tank weapons that have been rushed to the war in Ukraine to support Kiev in their battle with the Russians. And according to Western and Ukrainian sources, they have been effective. They say about 1,500 Russian tanks have been taken out. They're rushing to supply more. All this is part of Joe Biden's effort to put pressure on Congress to pass another $33 billion in funding for Ukraine, about $20.5 billion of that for direct military support. They've spent already the nearly $3.5 billion that was given over. This is an unprecedented amount of support for a country.
And I urge the Congress to pass this funding quickly to help Ukraine continue to succeed against Russian aggression. As I said from the beginning, this fight is not going to be cheap, but caving to aggression would even be more costly.
And according to Ukrainian officials, they need these even more now that the war has moved to the sort of Donbass area where tanks are very, very important indeed. Of course, the US is rushing other equipment as well, including the Stinger missiles, which are anti-aircraft, and howitzers and long-range artillery. This has all led to real questions. So we've seen it from warnings from Moscow in the last few hours or so, saying, look, stop supplying Ukraine with weapons, because there's a real feeling here in the US, but also among those that take a more neutral view to the conflict, that essentially the US is pursuing a proxy war, fighting to the last Ukrainian, if you like, against Russia. This was heightened by the fact that US Secretary of Defense, along with the Secretary of State, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, said after his visit to Ukraine recently that they want to weaken Russia to the point where they won't be able to be, as the US calls them, an aggressor. Well, that essentially looks like a foreign policy aim way beyond the Ukrainian conflict and calls into question these huge amounts of arms supplies. All this is going to be addressed in the US Congress. And even though it's been pretty bipartisan for now, there is a growing feeling that what is the end game here? Is it essentially a proxy war against Russia, or is this about terms that Ukraine would accept? Of course, this is still a long way off, but as we know, the US has been dragged into wars from proxy wars before. I'm thinking, of course, of Vietnam, the Iran-Iraq conflict as well, which led to confrontations with Iran and Iraq. So the memory of the American people and, let's face it, the wider world, when it comes to these conflicts escalating, mission creep, if you like, is very real indeed. But of course, this is part of Joe Biden's push to get billions of dollars of more aid for Ukraine. Nathan King, CGTN at the White House.